Hi, good evening. My name is Bob Green. I'm the chair of the Board of Appeals for zoning matters here in the town of North Reading. Beginning tonight's meeting to call it to order. Today being Thursday, December 11th, we are meeting at the Distance Learning Lab, North Reading High School. Our meeting time is to begin at 6, and it's just past that. For purposes of quorum, myself, Michelle Bodian, Brendan Riley, who were the designated board members for purposes of the rendering of the decision ultimately on this application, are present, as is once again Matt Martin. We're also joined by Kathy Morgan, secretary and assistant to the board, and attorney George Pucci on behalf of the town as purpose with legal counsel. Good evening. As we did at the last meeting, I want to begin by establishing the calendar for our January meeting so that we can keep both the schedule and that up front for people who might not be able to stay through the end of tonight's meeting. So for that purpose, we have calendared Thursday, January 22nd, 2026. Again, once again here at the Distance Learning Lab, North Reading High School. To the applicants, that is understood, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. In addition, as we did at the last meeting and we attempt to do, we have minutes from the last meeting. Would anybody from the board who's had a chance to review them? Council, you received a copy of the minutes? Any comments or additions that you want to make?
No.
I've reviewed them, Bob, and I find them to be accurate.
With that being the case, I'd like to move for the purpose of entering the minutes from the Zoning Board of Appeals for November 19, 2025 as being a fair and accurate representation of the matter as the public hearing was conducted that evening and comments and attendant information was gathered.
Second.
Thank you, Brendan. All in favor of entering the minutes as set forth and proposed?
Brendan Riley, aye.
Aye.
Bob Green, aye. Thank you, board. So, moving into tonight's agenda. It's an interesting question that was raised with regard to the last meeting. I know there were a couple of these, maybe possibly several items, and I know that there were responses provided. In particular, I know that there were 2 abutters that you were going to try to meet with regard to the issue of that back wall.
Received an email from Christina. 1 hour. Sure take. So we're going to do outreach and find a time that works for, I think.
We'll still need to find a place
Okay.
to meet, but travel schedules with work and school and everything, it's been a challenge to.
Well, and again,
We're working it.
admittedly, we did have a holiday, and we've got another one too before the 22nd. The upside to the 22nd of January is a little further out. But I raised this idea because as we go through these meetings and we designate them for purpose, as we hope to do, matters get raised and that weren't foreseen, and it gives us an opportunity to have as much input so that when we meet again, think about issues that might be raised tonight, we would want to be able to have a response for an informed conversation about follow-up again in January for those matters. So I'm certainly optimistic, but I'm just want to urge all parties to do their best so that the town, the community has a very clear understanding of the impact as it might be on their neighbors, as well as in this case the applicant as well. in all fairness. So if the time permits, while we have ideally set forth this for being purposes of discussing public safety and traffic issues, and I don't want to delay the agenda tonight. If opportunity presents at the end, by all means, feel free, as the community offers insights and thoughts on what they hear tonight, as well as the continuing development, no pun intended, of the project itself. I'd like to keep this as open a forum as possible, while at the same time trying to maintain a focus. Thank you. So, with that being said, I'd like to, I know we have members from public safety here. I don't want to delay tonight's agenda. So, for purposes of the traffic and public safety issues, it's an interesting question. Who goes first? I would probably defer to the officers for purposes of public safety, but.
Yeah, so I'm Mark Zimmerman, I'm the chief of police, I got Lieutenant Howard with me. We don't really have a lot of, we talked to Danielle a little, we're just more here to listen to see exactly what the traffic plan was and what the impact is gonna be as far as the entrance. I see on the, if I'm correct, the new plans, the entrance has been moved or taken away, so it's only gonna be one entrance instead of the two. So we're just here to see how that's gonna impact like the pedestrians and the safety inside of the parking lot if we're only gonna have one entrance. Because we had some concerns if there was gonna be two entrances moving it across from Mid-Iron and the offsets and the sight lines, especially with that fence that's right on the corner there.
So when was the last time you were approached by the developer or the town? It was previous when there were two access points.
Right.
So maybe it might be best to allow the developer, the applicant, excuse me, to talk about their plan, because I know it was broached in our last meeting, but with this being set up for being focused for purposes of public safety and obviously traffic, maybe best to allow that to be understood by the community. Also, before we begin, we don't have any true microphone that can generate any kind of volume, so we're all doing this from, as Sister Patricia taught me in the 2nd grade, from your diaphragm. Project from your diaphragm. Of course, it was Catholic school, nobody knew where the diaphragm was in the body. But that being said and acknowledged, please do your best to not only speak clearly, but by all means take your time and as you are listening to people make comments and offer ideas and points, if those are things that you were going to speak to, by all means acknowledge that you support or object to that idea, but please, we're trying to move the matters forward for purposes of understanding as well. Lastly, as you speak, by all means, give a clear pronunciation of your name, as well as who you're here with or where you live in North Reading, so we can maintain a record for purposes of review. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So noted on being loud, I'll do my best. Most of the time, I'm pretty good at it. 1 second here to pull this back up. For the record, my name is Daniel Lasivna. I'm a traffic engineer with Vanaston Associates. We're the traffic consultants for the project. What I'm here to do today is and I apologize to the board for the presentation that's unfortunately behind you. But what I'm here to do today is essentially give a high-level overview of the traffic study we prepared for the development, as well as really with a specific emphasis on the recommendations and conclusions that came out of it. So just to give kind of a timeline of where we are as it relates to traffic and transportation, and specifically to the peer review process. We had done a transportation impact assessment, or fancy word for a traffic study, in November of 2025. that included a detailed assessment of traffic volumes, pedestrian and bicycle accommodations, and the transportation infrastructure in the vicinity of the project site. As a part of it, we assessed the impact of the project as it relates to additional vehicular traffic that the project is expected to generate, and then came up with a series of recommendations as they relate to site access, circulation, and potential improvements that would be required to accommodate the project. Then on November 14th, we received a peer review letter from GM2 that we believe provided relatively minor comments as they pertain to the traffic study we prepared, and it affirmed much of the methodology, conclusions, and recommendations that came out of said study. I understand that the peer reviewer may be here, so I won't go too much into their actual letter, but I will just note one of their comments, that being comment 1.9, which was that GM2 takes no exception to the conclusions provided within the report. Then, 10 days later, on November 24th, we issued a response to the peer review comments. We provided written responses to all of GM2's comments, and similarly, we took no exception to any of their comments, and we believe at this time we have addressed in writing most of, hopefully, all of their comments, and are essentially waiting either a follow-up letter or some kind of closure from GM2 to note that everything has been addressed. So that's kind of where we are. Then just to give you a high-level overview of the traffic study itself. This is the site, which I'm sure most, if not everybody here, is familiar with, off the south side of Elm Street, west of Teresa's, and south of the golf course. The study area that we assessed as a part of our traffic study is as follows here, and I apologize for the scale if you're not able to read it. Working west to east, we looked at the three unsignalized intersections that comprise the Boston Street, Elm Street triangle. Those are all, as I stated, unsignalized intersections with one movement under stop control, essentially defining a defined right-of-way and a side street, if it were. Then moving to the west, we looked at the, we're going to call it one intersection for the purposes of the analysis, the intersection of Elm Street at Teresa's and Judith Drive. And although the existing Teresa's driveway and Judith Drive are offset by about 20 to 25 feet measured curb to curb, it really functions as a single four-way intersection. And then the last intersection was Elm Street at Mid-Iron Drive, which provides access to the golf course, to the country club, as well as all of the residential units that have been built up off of that. To kind of form the baseline of all of our analyses, we performed two sets of traffic counts with an intent to gather as much information as we can relative to how seasonal fluctuations for traffic volumes along Elm Street would work. We mainly looked at two scenarios. We counted in August, where there's more traffic associated with the golf course and with the country club, but not school traffic. Then also in September, where we would expect there to be maybe slightly less golf traffic, but now there's this introduction of the additional traffic or the change in travel patterns or travel times associated with school. And what we found that was, on general, the September volumes that include the school traffic were found to be higher than the August volumes, with specific roadways such as Mid-Iron Drive found to accommodate more traffic during August, when the golf course was more readily used. So what we essentially did was combine the two, and for each specific roadway, we picked whichever month had the most amount of traffic on it. So what that did is kind of two-part. It, one, provides a conservative or a high baseline for which to assess the impact of the project by essentially creating a condition that may not occur, but provides us kind of a factor of safety from which to assess the impact of the project, where there's the most traffic on the roadway. In addition to vehicular traffic, we also looked at safety, specifically motor vehicle crashes at all of the study area intersections. We looked at 2 periods, one initial 5-year period, then as well as an extended period, which was requested by the peer reviewer. And the results of both of that, of a review of both of those periods, was that there was no existing identified safety deficiencies at any of these intersections. They were all found to have below average crash rates, things of that nature. Then, to assess the actual impact of the projects, we first estimated the amount of vehicle traffic that would be generated by the project. To do so, we used data published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, or the ITE, who are the kind of nationwide standard for such estimates. They use data that is based on actual studies conducted at similarly operating facilities for a wide range of uses, multifamily housing being one of them. And based on these estimates, we anticipate that the project at full build-out is expected to generate around 900 vehicle trips over the course of an average day, so over the course of a 24-hour period. And it is important to note that a vehicle trip, as it relates to this table, is a one-way trip. So a vehicle that leaves in the morning to go to work, and then a vehicle that comes home from work in the afternoon counts as 2 trips. So 900 vehicle trips is around about 450 vehicles leaving and coming back, or vice versa in the case of delivery vehicles, which those numbers are built into these estimates. Then, in addition to the daily number, we also looked at the weekday morning and weekday evening peak hours. So these are the for a residential development, as well as Elm Street, the peak hour during your commuting times in the morning between 7 and 9 in the morning and 4 to 6 in the evening. Although I do believe, because of the proximity to schools, we expanded that to either 2 or 3 to just make sure that we captured where the most traffic would be coming from, and estimated the amount of vehicular traffic we expect the project to generate during those peak hours, which was 75, 76 vehicle trips. Once again, one-way trips, we expect the majority of traffic to be leaving in the morning, going to work, and vice versa in the afternoon coming home. We then dispersed that traffic to the study area as you see here, which how we did this was based on census data for residents within the town of North Reading, and noting where they worked and how they would get there based on a review of the roadway network, as well as existing travel patterns along the roadways and at these intersections, given the large amount of existing residential dwellings out here. We anticipate about a 55-45 split leaving the project site, with 55 headed east towards Boston Street, either to go up to Middleton or go down to Linfield, go to Route 1 or 95, but then 45% headed towards the high school, headed towards the center of North Reading, as well as to get to 28 and 93. And then what we did was we overlaid this traffic onto what's defined as a no-build condition, so no build and a build condition with and without the project respectively, to determine what the impact of the project was. Then throughout our analysis, we concluded two main things. One of them is that all of the movements at all of these intersections during all of the peak periods were found to operate within acceptable parameters. And two, the actual quantifiable, if you were, material visible impact of the project would be at most an increase in vehicle queuing of up to 2 vehicles. Oftentimes it was 0, oftentimes it was 1, but at most during the highest traffic periods of the day, it was 2 vehicles. So if there's 2 to 3 cars in front of you now, there's going to be 4 to 5 with the construction of the project. And where we saw the increase of 2 vehicles was really at the Teresa's driveway, where 100% of the exiting traffic is now proposed to go. This is just a brief summary slide of a lot of things that I've talked about up until this point. We can jump down to the bottom 2, because really we took everything that I've just discussed and come up with a series of recommendations as it relates to site access and circulation. Probably the most important of which being the location of the driveway. So as it was noted today, we have, and I don't know if my cursor's going to show up there. It's not. But to the northeast of the plan and of the page, you'll see that we are only proposing a single curb cut at the location of the existing Teresa's driveway now. And the reason for that being, as was noted by the chief, was site distances. Mainly for 2 reasons. One, the geometry of Elm Street, the horizontal and vertical curves, and 2, a fence that exists on, I forget the property, 34 Elm Street, that restricts the sightlines looking to the west. So really what we did is we looked at the whole frontage of the property and determined where sightlines were maximized, where the best sightlines were provided, which just happened to coincide with where the existing driveway is. So then you can see coming back into the site, there's proposed to be a new driveway that will essentially bisect the existing parking field within Teresa's, and it's a little hard to make out on there, but that will essentially become the main line, if you will, to access the project site, with then the revised parking field essentially being the side streets. And why I'm talking about this is because that's essentially how we would expect this to operate, where much like any other unsignalized intersection or driveway that exists along Elm Street now, there's going to be a defined through put for the purposes of the Teresa's driveway. That would be, and it's a little shaded there, but that would be the existing driveway, with then the side street being the new driveway to access the project site. But unlike those existing intersections along Elm Street, these are not roadways, despite them being designed as such. These are driveways. These are lower volume, lower speed roadways than what we see out on Elm Street, and we don't anticipate that this configuration would have any detriments to vehicle safety or pedestrian safety, provided that things like lighting, signage, all those appropriate things are in place to facilitate people from the parking in the far lot to be able to get to the restaurant. And with that, thank you very much for listening with eyes glazing over as I talk for far too long about traffic. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that the board may have. Thank you.
So to the board at this time, any questions? And feel free to defer until after the peer review presentations made and the public safety contributions. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. So at this time, we're going to introduce and hear from the peer review representatives that were engaged for purposes of assessing pretty much the same issues and questions and concerns and matters regarding, in particular, the traffic on or around, in this case, 40 Elm. So for that purpose, we have representatives from GM2. If you might, whoever is going to be presenting, step to
Just
the
pop up there for a moment.
Please. Thank you.
Good evening. Good to see you all again. My name's Eric Carlson, Chief Engineer with GM2 offices in Medford, and I'm here with my colleague Jonathan Scarup, who is a Senior Traffic Engineer with the firm. Jonathan did the peer review, and in a moment he'll be able to provide his comments on that particular review, but I wanted to just say that there was a civil site and stormwater review that remains ongoing. We received revised plans from the applicant just before Thanksgiving, and I think we'll be able to issue that follow-on peer review early next week. We've also been assisting the Conservation Commission with peer review with respect to their purview and particular issues, and I believe that there was a follow-on peer review. We're down to a couple comments on that was issued this afternoon. Okay, so that's just, the overall review continues, but now I'll turn it over to John and let him provide his feedback on the traffic aspects.
Good evening, everyone. Like Eric said, my name is John, and I did the peer review. I've been on both sides of this. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've written a number of these studies, and I've also done peer review for many of them. So when I first look at these, the first thing I do is I assess, like, do these guys know what they're doing? And the answer is yes. And the next measure is, did they do an okay job, a good job, or a great job? And I would say they did a pretty good job on this one. There's nothing for me to argue in the report. They followed all the standards, they hit all the check marks, they did all the things that I was looking for as a reviewer. I broke this down into two components for myself to review. I consider the intersection piece where it meets Elm Street, one part of the project, and then the internal operation, the second piece. We'll talk about the internal piece first because that's pretty easy. Did they do the fire truck check? Yes. Do they have enough parking spaces? Yes. Do they have sidewalk from the site all the way up to Elm Street? Yes. Was there lighting in check? Mostly. I had one comment about where they have a mid-block crosswalk. I don't think it's shown on this plan. Just to the left where it says Lot 2A, right in the corner. I believe there was a proposed crosswalk there. Is that correct, Ian?
That I have
Did that
to
go
go back
away?
and check, yeah.
There was one, a comment on the light. Looks like the light meter, they were shy of the two that they needed, I think 1.7. Like that's the kind of comment I'm generating at this point. When we're looking at the site stuff, I'm having an argument about the base of the signpost. Those are such minimal comments on this that it's great that that's where we are. The assessment used multiple time of year counts. I give them credit for doing that. That would have been the first thing that we jumped on is, did they take appropriate counts? They had to combine them. We had conversation back and forth. They've addressed all those comments. I I will admit to, the first time I saw the site plan, the driveway was to the west. That's since been changed. I think we're still ongoing, I have some comments on that, but I don't see anything in here that's standing out to me that would not lead me to agree with them, and Daniel put that comment up there that I have no objection to any of the comments they provided. We could argue back and forth about percentages of who's going in what direction. At the end of the day, it's not gonna amount to enough of a significant change for me to change my opinion. The number of trips is less than 100 in peak hours. I have no objection to the methodology used, and those numbers seem very reasonable. The number of trips per day is pushing 900. That's completely reasonable. I've done lots of these. The numbers check out. And other than having some back and forth semantic conversations about crash history, I didn't see anything then that even jumped out to me off the page. They addressed the sight line condition that they presented. I didn't have to bring it up. I just commented on it and where the driveway was. My preference would be to have the crosswalks line up in those sections, but that's beside the point. And I made comments about the internal circulation, how the sidewalk is lined up. They've since revised those and provided those responses to me in the comments. So at this time, other than some cursory follow-up comments that I'm sure we need to address pretty readily, I don't have any additional comments, but I'm happy to answer any questions we have. Sure. That's fine.
All right. So there's one intersection in the whole area that we just looked at that fell to a level of service of D, which is still acceptable, but it's all dependent upon the counts. I guess it would be helpful for everyone to understand, like at what level do you need a traffic light, or do you have to go from a D to an F? And I guess a follow-on to that is how off would the traffic counts had to have been for us to get to that level here? Because a lot of the comments early on is there's no way you're not going to need a traffic light someday because of all this traffic. I think it would be helpful to understand, like, based on the data that's out there, we got to a D at one spot. Well, we would have had to have been off by, instead of 900 cars, it would have had to have been 1,000 cars or 2,000 cars to get to that F. Right?
Sure. So that's a whole process, and isn't just one individual answer. There's a whole traffic signal warrant checklist. You would not hit your 8-hour criteria. That's usually the main one. Like, you have to have enough traffic for 8 running hours of the day to warrant a traffic signal. And then the next level down is when you have 4. I don't think you would need that either. I think 4 is like any 4. Maybe have that backwards. And then there's the peak hour count. You're not at the peak hour either. You're not close enough to be close enough. That's my opinion. Going looking at them, I've seen enough of those. I've done enough tests. I've done enough warrant analysis that it would warrant. However, our assessment of whether or not you need one does not preclude public opinion and installing one because you feel that there's some other need. So if the town decided that there was some extreme cause that they wanted one, you could go that avenue. You would just not have the support of a warrant analysis that said you need one. If you were in a school area and you had many children crossing because you're right next to a school, that would be another warrant that's on its own. You don't have that. So based on what I've seen in the area, I don't think you would get anywhere close to the warrant analysis we would consider.
Is that a full signal or a flashing light? Is that also considered under a different criteria?
That's considered under a different criteria.
And how far are we away from, how far is the study away from, if you were to consider a flashing light a lesser criteria, excuse me, lost me, how far are we off from, how far is this development up from that?
Without having my manual of uniform traffic control devices in front of me, I don't think I can give you an appropriate number-based answer on that, because I think for the flashing signal, it's there's other criteria that require a separate engineering study to determine that. That one's not volume-based.
In your experience of reviewing traffic proposals and, do you ever avail yourself, does the firm ever avail itself to coming in after the fact and seeing how much the assessment that was provided, whether it's your review or their proposal, is realized?
We can, typically, we get hired to do that. For something like this, it usually comes out pretty close. But you'd have to have some special condition. Recently, a distribution warehouse where it was a difference between being like an Amazon or a UPS and whether they bring in heavy trucks or constantly in and out with small trucks. We've had to do that because the owner has changed the use after they've got approval, and that creates its own headaches. But with something like this, your peak hour generator and your volumes are low in terms of affecting how close you are to get to a signal. You just don't have enough additional volume to get you to the annual level of service. You're not at level of service long enough to warrant that signal. My first one is, are you looking for, are we talking about at Elm Street, or talking about further down at Boston Street?
So Boston Street's where the deed is, right?
Yes.
So, and not in our town, so we don't have any jurisdiction over it.
Again, to me, it's a, I would have to do the warrant analysis, and if we're saying the warrant analysis, it would be no. You would get enough yes checks to be yes, this passed warrants 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8.
So I think the point is, like, it's really hard to get to a level of to necessitate a traffic light, like you would use a shopping center here, not, operating homes.
Well, if you have other mitigating factors that are physical, like you have really bad sight lines and there's a crash history. Crash history would be, one of those ones that you would tick off the box, but they did the crash study, and you're not at the average. You're less than the average, so you wouldn't, if you're looking for like state funds to get it, you wouldn't get there. There's so many other places that are above the average that you just wouldn't get on the list.
I did read it all, but can you remind me, the traffic studies, the counts that were done, neither were done while Teresa's had a function or while the parking lot was full? Was that correct? It was independent of what was going on the location?
To my knowledge, that's correct.
Okay. Is that typical or atypical, or is it not relevant because usually you don't cut through a party function to put in a facility?
It's not applicable. I just don't think that in the context of the development that's going to sway one way or another. Doing that would be like a site-specific, one-period, 2-hour count on Saturday night relative to the rest of the traffic on Elm Street. So you may have like a major generator at that period on Elm Street, but that may not coincide with the major period of traffic that's typically using Elm Street. So you have more at your center exiting. You wouldn't have an equal number coming on Elm Street, so you may have more or less in total. So it is about it.
One thing I will just jump in here as well, if everyone's finding that's a very good comment. That was something that we definitely looked at and thought about as we were going through the study. And for function, for uses like this that can have those certain events where there's a higher volume of traffic, both vehicle and pedestrian, those are certainly something that should be looked at. And when we kind of took that into account, just given the fact, and this going back to what I said as part of my presentation as well, is these are driveways. These are not roadways. These are lower volume, lower speed driveways where even the increase in traffic, both vehicular and pedestrian, that would come from a function is not to the point where we would expect it to create a unsafe condition or some condition such that there was a large amount of congestion within the site. But that certainly wasn't something that we thought about.
Another recommendation was to cut some trees to improve the sight lines. Are those, can you show where those trees are? Are those on Teresa's property? Like, is it to the left? Call it west of the entrance, east of the entrance?
I can certainly try. They are west of the entrance, and they are either within the Teresa's property or within the public right-of-way that's owned by the town. I will
I don't have a laser pointer.
try not to pull wires here. They're essentially directly above me right now. And it wasn't so much of cutting down trees, because they are offset from the roadway by a significant amount. It was essentially just making sure that any low-hanging branches, anything under 10, 5, 10 feet, things like that are trimmed to be able to extend the sight lines further.
Excuse me. I understand it's your guys' turn, but these things keep getting scheduled nights that we have things. I have a teacher conference. It's parent-teacher night. And I have an appointment at 7:30 that I was not able to switch with any other parent, and I would like my turn, because I have not been able to come to any of these because of the nights that these are scheduled. So if I could please speak at least at 7 o'clock, I would appreciate it.
Okay, noted. I only have one last one. How recent are the ITE standards that you are recognizing?
Brand new, latest, it's like they just came out, I think, like
August, I
last
think
year,
it was.
this year.
Yeah.
There's news you can get.
Anything in addition? Any additional comments?
No, I have nothing.
Anything from the board at this time?
I can wait till after.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I know we're dealing with traffic, and I know we have members from the local police department. Do you have anything directly to ask that might be relative to what you've heard from the presentation so far?
I don't know at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson, anything that additionally that as, you know?
I don't think so. I was just taking another look at the intersection with Boston Street, which I traveled through and around. Grew up in Linfield and familiar with those areas. I guess we understand the accident history at that intersection is below average. Below average.
I asked the question, some of the newer data has not been finalized, but I did not see anything that suggested that it's.
I'm a highway engineer, and when I see intersections like that, I want to tee them off, because you have two-way traffic on three sides of an aisle. But if it's working, then you know, keep it as it is. But if it was problematic, then that could be a project that either the town undertakes on their own in the future, or off-site mitigation if it was deemed necessary. But those are often difficult intersections.
All right, if there's nothing more from you, I apologize. If there's nothing more at this time, please, we're going to afford members of the community to ask and/or address concerns. Sure. Thank you. So, if you might, please stand, clearly state your name and where you reside.
Yep.
And, please, thank you.
Minosca Valdez, 28 Flint Street. I am also a member of DIRC, which is the community committee that was created to fight 20 Elm Street originally. So now I'm having to jump in again. So let me say that having to do this again and take a lot of time away from my kids a second time after everything that we went through with Mr. Yeba, is just upsetting to me because it just seems I don't know, a lot of interest in just money and not interested in what's happening to neighbors. Again, my opinion, as some people go up and say my opinion, so that is my opinion. And I also have a disabled brother that lives with me and I take care of. So as you can see, I don't have the luxury of time. Let me say that 2 trips a day, we're adults here, that is absolutely absurd. I make minimum 8 trips a day back and forth to my house. That's just with the kids, if I were to just drop off the kids and pick them up and stay home for the rest of the day.
That's.
And I do not
trips
do that.
So you want to continue on with the answer as you go?
Well, I was just finishing what I was saying. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so that trip generation rate is based on everyone in the building on average, on a weekday.
All
Yes.
540 of them?
Is that the total population?
That's the total population, but this building is 540.
So the trips are 900, so it counts to like 1.8, right? That's about the average total. That's not based on 3 studies across the country. That's based on hundreds of studies. The data point plot for that trip generation has hundreds of points on it, and there's a best fit line, and there's an equation. So they use the more conservative of those values. I can't, as a reviewer, like I have no skin in this game, right? Like I'm not here to say yes or say no. I'm here. Did they follow what needed to be done? Did they follow the standards? Did the numbers make sense? And the answer is yes. They did not pick some data point on this plot that is way out of left field. They're right on the line, and they have the equation, and they followed the guidance of the latest available information, which is as complete a record as we can get. Unless you have another development just like this on this street, half a mile down, that shows you other data, I can't disagree with what they put in their report. I would do the same thing. So by the standard, they've addressed everything that they need to do. Trust me, I checked this. I've had it happen to me on the other side, where someone says, I don't agree with what you did, and I've had to bring up the plots and show them. They have good data for this. So as a reviewer, there's nothing for me to argue. I can't say you're way off. I can't say there should be 25% more, 25% less. They use good data.
Well, on your end, as a resident, which mind you, I'm further up,
Sure.
so this doesn't actually affect me as much, but I moved to this town and I care about my neighbors. And I was still dealing with a toddler and barely knew anybody when I helped create the committee for that reason. It was my first and forever home. You may not be able to argue because of the way the data is presented, and that's how your job description fits. But on this end, we can argue because, of course, they picked the conservative. They didn't say what is the most, like, if the highest point, what would be?
Oh, I'm sorry that my apologies.
Okay.
When I say most conservative, they didn't pick the lowest.
Okay, it's the highest.
They picked the highest.
Okay.
So they went and said, if, like you pointed out, said, we don't know what the traffic is like here, but we picked the worst from this end and worst from this end and worst here, with the worst total that they could get to combine all those things, and that's why they're still in level of service D at Boston Street, and that's why the analysis is what we call conservative. I would definitely pick that out and say, no, you cheated and picked the low number there, and you picked the low number there, and you picked the low number there until I could get to this area.
Yeah, it's different terms and different.
Correct, sorry.
No, that's fine. And then also, and then I understand that I may be a little different because I am back and forth all day, but like I said, for me, it's a minimum of 8, okay? We are not expecting only couples to move into this location. So it is very reasonable to expect that there will be trips to the school. Last year it was different. Now I have kids in 2 schools. Unless everyone has twins who moves in. There will be different trips to schools, different times. But with that said, the location where it's at, we're talking about, let's be realistic about daily life. Trips to school, stores, then you come back, there's sports. Let's go get gas. Someone's at a friend, someone's at the library. I have to go to a conference like tonight, I have to go see the teacher. Daily life is not just, I literally get up, go to work, come home, and I'm home for the night. That's also absolutely not realistic.
I have a 16-year-old who just got his permit.
Yeah.
And I have a 13-year-old daughter, and they both play sports.
Yes. I grew up in a house, I'm the youngest. There were 5 cars in the house before I could even drive. So, I was car number 6. Yeah, so, yeah, not realistic at all to count that as, okay, let's do 2 trips. I mean, and then people, oh, we're missing something that we forgot at the grocery store. Oh, I gotta go grab a prescription. I mean, are we gonna count absolutely every single thing? No. Are some households busier than others? Yes. But to count 2 trips a day, like 1 in, 1 out for each person is just silly. That is not the world that we live in today. Nobody, unless you say, oh, I really didn't feel well, I went to work, and when I came home, I just came home, had super knocked out. Like, that's not regular life.
Part of that relies on the assumption that every person there will have a car. So part of the data that's taken into account is that there is multimodal transportation and there is carpooling. So I understand. I'm not here to.
No,
we
I understand.
We can have the conversation all night, but again,
Yeah.
it's if you go to those rates, and unless you can show me another development in North Reading
Right.
or anywhere within a 50-mile radius, I'll give you that has one of these developments that's new, and you can show me that there is something different and there's more. Those studies are abundant enough, and the ITE has generated those data points and said, yes, this is the best practice. These are the numbers you should use. It's recognized by all the DOTs, Federal Highway, all the town councils say, no, you have to do it. That the guideline is, are you meeting or using those numbers?
Right.
So that's, I wish I had more to give you, but that's what I have to go by. And from my experience, the numbers are good.
And then, so realistically, as someone who has lived here since 2007, well, we moved in beginning of 2018, even people who rent in town have a car. Even if it's not a fancy Mercedes or Porsche, like some other people who can afford in town, who live in nicer, fancier areas, they have a car. And you cannot live in that area and reach anything in town. We have no public transportation. In a 50-mile radius also, I understand that also may be the guideline, but as someone whose parents owned a home in Lynn for 33 years, I went to PVD schools and hung out in Salem and then lived there for the last 8 years. That's within 50 miles. And that is absolutely completely different than how this town is. I used to, at 12 years old, hop on a train and meet my cousin in Jamaica Plain. There's public transportation. I could get from Lynn to Revere to there. From here, my kids will never be able to get to anywhere if I don't drive them. So we take our kids to New York so that my kids understand city life.
So all due respect, so the point is that you disagree with the
Yeah, I
frequency
mean,
numbers that they're presenting?
Yes, I mean, what it's being compared to is not the same. And yes, it puts us in a very unique situation. So you can't, if it were Somerville and you said in a 50-mile radius, that's different. There's a lot of other city around it that is comparable. But North Reading, just in size, the dynamics of it, what's available to us, is not the same as even the towns that we touch. Linfield, North Andover, like you go up just up the road, look at how downtown like North Andover's up and how that communicates compared to what we have here. My kids as teenagers will not be on 28 to shop. That is a long haul for them. You must have a vehicle here in town. Even our seniors, we provide that through the senior center if they need to go shopping if they don't have a car. So that may be the guideline, but it is a guideline that is being used to help that development because it does not fit what is adequate for this town and for the people who live in this town if they were to move there. And the other thing I was going to mention is the parking spots. The last information, if you don't mind.
Were you involved in the parking study?
No.
Okay.
Fair enough. I mean, I'm not trying to
Okay.
cut
Well-
you off, but I'm trying to keep the
Okay.
the
Well, can I just
conversation.
mention something, and if that continues,
Sure.
because like I said, I have to get to
Fair
school,
enough.
is we have a parking ban from November 15th through April 15th. In this town, it is no parking on the street at all, period. I'll compare in Salem, Peabody, you have a blue light. If the light goes on, then you can't park. But in North Reading, you can't park at all. So if they have the proposed 327, but 400 is actually needed, and they have a waiver, what happens to that overflow from November to April? Mind you that a lot of our streets where we don't have sidewalks and don't have stuff already, we have people walking on those streets, and we have narrower streets. I'm a smaller, narrower street myself. So that's just something you can take over, I guess, later if that comes up. Okay. So I guess the developer can answer that. You know, my child's being taught, again, and in Salem, I'm used to tourism, vehicles, bikes, all that. I have no issues with that. I stop when the bikes go. My kids are being taught that, but you do have to realize you have to adapt to where you
Sure.
live.
Okay,
So that's just a concern too.
concern about the lack of spaces.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else to be directed towards the peer review? Please.
Hi, my name's Alan Helfrich. I live at 8th Street. I mean, maybe I'm an idiot and just don't understand the numbers, but we have 340 bedrooms with a potential of 540 residents living there. One trip, 2 trips a day don't even equal your numbers. And there is no bus, no walking, no nothing. So if you have 540 people that could possibly live here, and each one of those take 2 trips a day, what will be your numbers? That's 1,080.
I use 2 as a generalization.
What?
I use 2 as a generalization. I believe it's close to 1.78 or 1.8. I don't have the number in front of me. I don't have the whole book memorized for all 1,000 trip generation rates. That's
I know, but
off the top of my head.
what I'm saying is with the amount of residents alone.
4 people in 1 car is 1 trip. It's not. It's
What?
if you have 4 people in 1 car.
I have a
That's
family of
4 passenger
5.
trips.
I have
That's
7
1 vehicle
vehicles.
trip.
I have a family of 5. I got 7 vehicles. What are you talking about? 4
You're gonna
people
drive
in a
all
car.
7 at once?
What?
You're gonna drive all 7 at
All
once
right,
yourself?
please.
Both my kids have a car. I
Sir,
have a car. My
sir,
wife.
Just, with all due respect, the tone, I'm not trying to limit anybody in this community. If anything, our job as the board is to best present the concerns of the community as well as
I'm just.
what we have here. So,
I'm just saying the numbers don't lie.
yes, I think.
Apparently the study does though.
Mr. Chair, if I jump in here, I would just like to correct something for the record, because there's been a lot of talk in the past couple minutes about the trip generation. In no point throughout the study did we assume a occupancy or the number of people that would be living within this residential development. The estimates are based off of the number of units, which is 200 residential units. That is how we developed the numbers. furthermore, there was the talk of public transportation and things of the like. We took no credit for any residents that would be using the non-existent public transit when we went through when we did our numbers. So I just wanted to get those on the record.
And my thoughts, it was a recommendation to get public transportation, right?
Mr. Chair, if I could just add one comment for detail. This
Your
is-
name for the record.
I'm sorry, Mark Bernansky, Sean Carlos mentioned. This is a 200-unit apartment complex comprising 320 bedrooms total. The number of 540, I don't know where it's come from, I'm hearing it a lot, but again, there's 320 bedrooms on the property. Typically, from a parking perspective, we find that a ratio of 1 parking space per bedroom is more than sufficient to fulfill the needs of our residents and the guests. We don't anticipate parking on Elm Street, notwithstanding the parking ban. We have sufficient parking on the property.
Noted. So, to the gentleman from the community, I apologize the name. So, you're again, just for clarification, just for purposes of the record, that we're trying to disagree with their estimates, and you think they're clearly understated?
It's way understated. You have, so I was told 340 bedrooms, right? A master bedroom normally has 2 people, right?
320 bedrooms.
All right, so we'll adjust the numbers a little, right? So 320 bedrooms, the master bedroom normally has 2 people, right? And then you add,
A studio could only have 1.
so,
Studio can only have 1
Could
bed.
only have 1.
One bed,
yeah,
1 bed.
or could have 2.
It could.
And then every bedroom could be filled with a child, right, which would be roughly 140 children that live there, right? So the number is still right around, a little bit less than 540 people that could live here. And if you take the numbers and you add them to just twice a day, it's above the numbers that they're putting out.
So the kids in the bedrooms, everyone's driving as well?
No, but you gotta drive the kids to school. I make 4 trips before 9 a.m. I'm just saying, like, your trip generation, it's not accurate.
I disagree. I understand your
If
opinion
there was a
on
place
this,
to
but
walk to, or they could walk to school, or walk to the supermarket, or walk to a pharmacy, which they can't walk anywhere, right? The only leaving that property is by driving. That number is way low. It's a complete lie. It's how I see it. Not to be offensive, but I'm just saying it's not there.
Again, you have an opinion.
I don't have an
disagree.
opinion. I have numbers.
We actually have the numbers. We've engaged a traffic engineer, and then there's been a peer reviewer, and they agree. And so those are actually the numbers. There's a lot of opinions, and opinions have meaning, but in terms of numbers and facts, I believe that, I think the takeaway, at least my takeaway here, and I am partial, of course, is that the amount of traffic impact is kind of spot on as we projected.
Well, these are our facts.
I
They're not
understand.
opinions.
Okay.
They're actually in our
For
hearts.
purposes,
so
all right,
we're just
I'm,
stating.
as chair, I'm going to, I think everybody's been offered an opportunity to express how they got to their number.
Mhm.
And
We'll just hardly
obviously,
state it
there's a
as
disagreement
opinions,
on
so
what
just
those
saying.
numbers might mean or how they are being presented. But I'm just trying to keep the conversation going for the entire group. And I think everybody, those points have been there's been opportunity to explain and respond. Mayor.
Hi. My name is Melissa Austin. I live at 19 Riverside Drive. I'm curious if this has been brought to the Middleton Planning Board or their police department where 55% are heading towards Boston Road to that intersection. Have we brought it as a courtesy to them to tell them what we're putting into their traffic? Because that is a very busy intersection. I leave here at 6:30, it is busy. I come home anywhere between 3 to 5, and it's busy. So has a courtesy been put out to Middleton Police Department or their planning?
Everyone within 300 feet of the project.
For the record, everybody within 300 feet of the project has been noticed on the development, so while I can't personally tell you that they've received notice, I would have to believe they're aware of this development, just as our town fathers and members of our community are aware of projects being put forward in those respective communities.
But you're not sure? Okay.
What I can tell you is that they're aware of the project. Whether they're accessing the same documents and submissions, which are on our public record, that you'd have to ask. And it's a fair question to ask.
Yeah, just curious. This is a very busy intersection.
Ma'am, please.
Hi, my name's Kathy Stewart. I live at 13 Riverside Drive. I have a couple of questions. I understand clearly the debate and the debacle about the inconsistency about how many trips people go back and forth. I also do not believe the statistics. But and having said that, how do you actually get, I'm just curious, how do you actually get the statistic? Is there a counter that actually tracks how many cars go in and out of a particular situation, like in Edgewood, was somebody actually there counting the number of cars that went in and out on a given day between those peak periods? Or how else do you statistically determine how many cars go in and out? Because without, I think, an actual physical count, and you're not doing it because you don't actually know how many people are going to live there or how many cars they have, how do you actually do that? I'd like to have a better understanding of the methodology.
Sure,
Thanks.
absolutely. The data is compiled from studies across the country where people actually sit at the driveways to these businesses, developments, whatever they are, and they count the cars either with an automated traffic recorder that they're observing, or the old-fashioned way, and I used to do this, you're sitting in the car with a manual counter, you know, beep, 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 this guy from that direction, oops, I gotta wait for another guy because I missed the button. It's done manually, it's not done, it's not guesswork.
Okay.
It's done by an accumulation of manual studies that have actually been physically done, where people actually go and physically count the road, and this is counted the roadway and the development. So take a Dunkin' Donuts, right? There's lots of those around. We have a really good idea of the kind of traffic that's coming out of Dunkin' Donuts. It does have a drive-through, doesn't have a drive-through. It's on a street corner. It's mid-block. It's in this town. It's in that town. Those are places you can go and actually count, or they've been done so many times. The data for that is really good. The data for this land use code, which I just grabbed from it, which is land use code 200 multifamily housing mid-rise with 200 units. It is a well-researched land use code, and that's how that data is accumulated. It's not, we're guessing about this. It's an accumulation of data points, right? You can have, this building may have 200 units, and it may generate more traffic than a 200-unit development somewhere else. Those will wind up as two different data points on the plot. You get an average, and you also get an equation. Like I said before, they've taken the more conservative of those values and based across numerous studies. Is there the potential for there to be more traffic here than what's listed? Yes, but just as equal an opportunity for there to be less.
What is your statistical variance?
That would depend on the exact one, and I would need the book in front of me to look
I'm
at that.
asking
I
because
don't
every
know.
study has a statistical variance.
Yes.
And I would be very interested in finding out what that variance level is. My second question that would go to you would be when a project like this is completed, does anybody ever go back to verify the findings? Or do they just go this is our 200 that we had, you fit in this, therefore, you fit your square block, square thing, this is what you get. Does anybody ever go back and say, this is actually correct, to in fact validate that that particular one? Or is it, it's just done and nobody cares afterwards, no matter what the result is? So that you could actually say, I said that, you said that, and based on all these studies, that this is how many and this is what we have. Does anybody ever go back and say, oh dear, this isn't right, it's much lower or it's much higher?
It would go backwards from what you're thinking, as opposed to going back to development, counting the development. The problem would show up at the intersections, right? You'd see an increase in volume or something happening there, so you go back and you examine the intersection. This would probably be done by someone else at a later date, probably not by the same person who did the study for this. It would be a study in a few years undertaken by a different consultant by the town. They will go in and have a look and say, hey, we're either having a lot more volume or something's off at this intersection. But the unsignalized intersection is a little different because you don't have a traffic signal light that has timings for no cars. You don't have a bunch of dead time like you would. But that's typically how that would be found. We don't typically go back to these unless there's a reason to.
Okay, then
Like
if
you're not going to get the developer saying, hey, you need to come back in 3 years and take account. It's just.
Okay, so you don't do that. So the onus is then on the town and its constituents to pay for a further traffic study later on that, according to some of our opinions, would validate what we're saying, and then the problem would have to be resolved by the town with the taxes paid by its constituents. That's what I'm understanding. Is that
That is
correct?
out of my purview, and
I
you
understand that.
I can't answer that for the town.
But that would be my understanding. All right, I appreciate that. I find it almost, and I don't want to seem to be unprofessional on this. I know that this is what you do for a living, but as a gentleman that has a couple of kids in our community, I find it surprising that you can stand there dead-faced and say that you agree with these things, because I know you're not making one trip or 1.8 trips a day. And that's just sad. So anyway, that's just my comment, and I did not mean to be disrespectful at all.
It's okay.
It's just a comment, but thank you. I really appreciate the information that you gave me on how we gather that, because I didn't understand that. So thank you very much for that clarification.
Good.
Can
Thank you.
Can I mention just one address? I don't know, I know you guys said something about this, when looking into it, accidents, and you guys did a shorter time period and then went further back. I don't know how far back you guys went, but, and I know this was also a long time ago. I've been able to get to know some neighbors with everything when this initially started back in 2019 for us. But when I understand that maybe it, according to the studies, there's the accidents maybe, excuse me, like not as many, it's less than what normally occurs. But when there are accidents, from what I understand of people I've spoken to who have lived there, they're quite big accidents. I would speak to neighbors at 17 who had to have a brick stone wall put up in front of their house after someone crashed into their house and passed. And that's not something they hide. They're very open about what that the poor lady passed away. I mean, she was a nurse, just because there was fog and she couldn't see the house. And because of the curvature of the street, and so imagine that with traffic on top of it.
Is that Elm Street? Sorry.
Elm Street, yes, yes, 17, yep, across the street. And then the sibling lives across the street from them. They grew up in that house. So it's again, it's lots of little things that are just particular to the area. And let me, just so you know, because again, we've been doing this 19, we have never at all been opposed to that there's building there. It's the size that we've been opposed to. We have not ever said, we don't want anyone building there. We don't want other people, you know, it's been the size, what was agreed with the town and, Mr. Young said he would do, and it was completely not what, was initially agreed upon, and we just got into this because it wasn't put in paper.
Okay,
And then-
noted that's been
so-
raised at the meetings
Yeah,
previously.
I know.
Thank
Well,
you.
like I said, unfortunately, it's
understand.
been,
Please, but.
so I just wanted to give him the courtesy, because I don't know, of
Try to
letting him
build
know,
the
so.
community at whole.
So.
Regarding traffic
All right, I
for
gotta
this
go.
evening, is there any other comment in particular? Ma'am, please.
Yes, I would like
No,
to.
please.
Go ahead.
Serena Helfrich, 8 Lynn Street, do you want me to stand up?
Just while you read this.
I don't know if this is a question for you or for the board, or just with Teresa's restaurant being a non-conforming use of the residentially zoned land and it requiring an easement for the exit, I'm just wondering what happens if Teresa's restaurant changes owners in that situation. And then also, a lot of my questions were what is it Martin, my vision is on the ZBA board. So, I still can't see it. Oh, over 49. But you had mentioned about the trip totals, and so when they were taking into account the amount of vehicle traffic exiting being the 900, if it's not including the restaurant, and I think that was such an important point that I also had noted, so I just wanted to thank you for bringing that up. Also, it's used for a Corvette show. It's used for multiple other functions. It's over the summer, the pool is used, there's pool memberships. So that part of the driveway and the parking spaces is occupied a lot
So
of
it's a
time.
fair question.
Yeah.
There wasn't a study that showed a combined use. In other words, when the traffic studies were generated, there was a presumption that you were going to have your own access. And that Teresa's, if you would, their drive was going to basically remain theirs. Now, obviously, there could have been situations where one party uses the others, but it's an interesting question. In other words, if during the use of the resort in the summer, there's traffic in and out, and it does kind of generate a morning and end of the day situation, that was going to be alleviated by there being 2 entry points and exit points. That's not the case anymore. So now that you're using a shared single access, does that any way impact the results of the study?
So when we did the traffic counts that form the basis of our assessment, we did capture existing peak hour volumes going into and out of Teresa's under both of those conditions I mentioned, both the summer month as well as September. Then what we essentially did was add the new project traffic on top of that. So our build condition does account for existing traffic from Teresa's plus the new residential traffic.
So to that same point, and this is, might be building upon what I think you're trying to get to, and that's what I'm trying to further here. The average daily entry and exit that's being generated, that you showed earlier, was some 900 total trips. But that average, does that incorporate, is that 900 on August 1st as opposed to what could be occurring? Is it reasonable to say that's reflective of August 1st as opposed to December 1st?
So that,
Or is it just, this, again, the function of statistics, which is just to average everything out?
that is exactly correct. That is the, on any given average weekday, those 900 trips, 892.
Right, but to that
whatever
same
it
point.
happens to be,
But to that
it's
same
just the
point.
residential
Yes,
traffic.
but to that same point, the August activity at, is it Resorts North? Resorts North is substantially greater than a single day's traffic trips in and out on December 1st. So while you can average it out over a year, we have to be have some concern that during the months of June, July, August in particular, there's going to be an increase of flow. Now, it is going to average out as distinct.
Mr. Chair, the chat accounts were taken in August, so that should account for those.
So that
There
900.
was a chat account in August, I don't know the precise date, maybe you do. And there was a chat account in September. Again, the vision of, originally I think we were just going to take one count, but there was a comment, I can't remember if it was from the board or the public, that, you know, to be fair, summer you need to incorporate the golf traffic and also Resorts North. September incorporates the school traffic, and in some respects the 20 doesn't meet, right? And that's why it was encouraged that you actually take the worst numbers from each of those traffic counts to roll into the assessment.
So,
And
does that address?
No, I would love to be, I'm someone who tries to see the positive in everything. It's part of my job, what I do. And so I would love to be able to look at this in a favorable way or feel better. So I appreciate you taking the time to answer. What I think I'm hearing, I don't want to repeat the same things, but I think there is a disagreement in the numbers proposed trips out of there. And I do think that we should take another look maybe at the restaurant. Also, just thinking about people and how they live now with like Uber Eats and Amazon and all those things, like there's going to be more traffic. I did want to ask about the parking spaces. So is there still slated, because again, the applicant, we're on a tight timeline and we have to make decisions soon. And I feel like a lot of things are changing. I'm trying to keep updated on it. But is it 327 proposed parking spaces?
Approximately, yeah, within probably a 5 space.
So, and is that requiring a waiver for something short that we are?
Yes, I would say that parking requirements in North Reading and many other suburban towns are based on car ownership trends from the 50s, 60s, and 70s that aren't reflective of today's car ownership.
That's what
We're very comfortable with the one parking space per bedroom. And again, it might be a titch over.
I appreciate the transparency. I just wanted to make sure that what I'm reading is accurate. Where we do have the police and safety people here, I was just curious as to response times when you are, like, if there is a vehicle motor crash on this end of town, like approximately how long does it take you to get there? Do you anticipate problems? I do have a son that crosses that 62, and I hold my breath and watch him on Life 360 because he's visiting his best friend across the street there. There's a lot of curvature in the roads coming up from, we don't even allow my kids to pull out at Child's Road. So there's a lot of curves in the road there, and just in your experience.
So the answer is I don't know. But I can tell you, we haven't had any issues of response time. Granted, it's the furthest east part of the community. So we do, our community's broken up, our sectors in we have 3 sectors, one that covers the center, one that covers South Main, one that covers North Main. So the center sector would cover this area. And it is the furthest, but we haven't experienced any response time delays that would require us to get up here. But again, everything depends. Like if they're backing somebody else up on Main Street, of course it's gonna take longer. I guess my answer would be, the short answer to your question is, I don't anticipate this development causing us any further delays in response to a crash up here.
And would it be North Reading that would respond, or would it
It'd be North Reading, but we use mutual aid, and Middleton's, closer, so it depends on where we are or what calls we have. At most of the time, we have three officers on the road, so it all depends if they're, like I said, if they're tied up. Worst case scenario, if they're tied up down at Martin's Pond for some call, and we have all 3 of our cars go there, which is rare, but it could happen, and we don't have any cars available, and there's an accident up here, we would call mutual aid. So we would call Middleton or Linfield, whoever's closer, to ask them to come.
And do you have any statistics as far as any incidents with bicyclists or bicycles on that stretch of road? Would that be in your study as well? Or is that more like cars? Because I know nowadays all these kids suggested.
Yeah,
about
from the
certain
school
Yeah, so
superintendent.
if they're,
Well, maximum 32.
Yeah.
Actually, the number is it Edgewood or Martin's Landing? I can't remember.
Edgewood.
Edgewood, 400 units, has 40 children attending public schools, 200 units, 20, but I think we threw in an error term or variance, and said it could be up to 30.
So to answer your question, the bicycles, so in my time, I can recall one bicycle accident. That doesn't mean we haven't had more. I don't have the data in front of me. I do recall one that we're aware of that we've had. But is it a concern throughout the community with the e-bikes and the motorized e-bikes? Yes, we're not alone in that, obviously, and unfortunately, Stoneham had the tragedy. So we're very aware of it, but I don't think it's really particular for this area. It's throughout really the Commonwealth.
is there any upgrades you would suggest on that, like, or that you would recommend for the walkways that are?
You mean crossing? The question I had is the golf cart. They have like a little golf cart crossing. I think the maintenance use it. Is that staying? There's like a little
the path down to the pump?
Yeah.
No, going across.
No,
Elm
going
Street.
across
Elm
Elm
Street.
Street.
It says golf cart crossing.
Yeah, it's like at the entrance. It's a crosswalk, right? Yeah. And I know that golf carts use it, like the maintenance and stuff, they use it to cross Elm Street. I just didn't know if that's gonna be like
We don't use it as much as we used to.
yeah, is that gonna be like a crosswalk now, or what is gonna?
We don't, like, the only thing that's over there, the reason we're here, I'm sorry, Tim Wooten from the golf course. That was when we owned the property,
Right.
that was the crossing.
Yeah.
And now we just have a well over there. We probably only go to the well once a month or something. We don't use that, the sign just never came down.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it was gonna be turned into a crosswalk, or what it was gonna be, if it was gonna be utilized, or where that was gonna go.
It's my understanding that we'll be doing improvements to the crosswalk, but I, to be honest, I didn't even know about the golf cart path across the street, so I can't speak to it.
Yeah, I mean, the golf cart path is just, it's the same.
It's the same thing.
It's just a
Okay.
crosswalk.
Yeah.
Like,
I appreciate your answer.
So, Chief, if I might, it does raise an interesting question. Is there anything, and it may not be a fair question because your role is to just obviously deal with the situations as they might exist, whether they're in our community or the other ones. But is there anything that you would see that could somehow facilitate better public safety interests for your department that might not have been considered, or you would suggest to just possibly be considered?
So as far as Elm Street, one of the concerns we had was the two entrances, which obviously seems to be addressed because of the sight lines of the fence and everything like that. But I was at a meeting, and I forget when it was, and actually who was there, but we talked about some safety features inside of the facility that they were very open to, as far as cameras, lights, just because we have them in other complexes, because if there's crimes in there or whatever, to have cameras accessible for us to see who's coming and going. But we had talked about it at that meeting. So there are some concerns inside of the facility that we would be looking for, and like I said, at that meeting, they were very open to addressing those. But as far as Elm Street, I'm not a traffic expert, so I don't know the traffic counts or whatever, but as far as having that entrance, that one entrance to go out to Elm Street doesn't appear to create a big public safety problem for us, for the traffic. Yes, there are accidents, there's not a lot. They were some serious, the one that she was speaking of, I recall, I don't actually recall it exactly the way she described it, but I don't have that facts and I don't know all that information. But there are some serious accidents because of the corner, and that wall was built, so that's all true. But the safety on Elm Street, it doesn't seem to be raise a lot of public safety concerns for us with the traffic. my opinion.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Just last is, in North Reading, we're so lucky to live next to the river, and there's a lot of wildlife and wildlife crossing. And as someone whose daughter who crashed into a deer on 62 this past summer, that's another concern of mine, because they're going to be taking down a substantial amount of trees, and there's a lot of animals that cross in that area. So again, as an officer who's dealing with that, how often are those types of things? It seemed wild to me that she actually did have a run-in with one, but my kid's safety is.
It happens often, and I'm just going by the sign that I saw on the highway that says 75% of deer strikes happen during the month of November, and you know it's breeding season. But it happens fairly frequently around this time in North Reading, but it's not just located here. We have them down on Main Street, like on Winter Street, we had one recently. So it happens throughout the community, so it's not really, I don't know how much it would actually impact here. I'm sure it's going to if you take them down where they live, but I don't know that. But it does happen fairly frequently, but throughout town.
Do you have, does your department have conversations with the public school system for purposes of bus transportation protocols? It literally stops where they're gonna be made, or drop-off points?
No.
Okay.
But we do monitor it with the buses, but not like the specific spots of where they're gonna actually pick up children, and we don't have those conversations with them.
Mr. Mayor, typically, on these projects, we were asked to coordinate that with the school department and their traffic group. Frequently, the solution is that the bus will enter the property and will meet at the amenity space, and the kids gather there, enter the bus from there, and then leave the property from there. Obviously, I'd be shocked if the decision was to have a bus stop on Elm Street.
So just to stand corrected, Lieutenant Howard, he was the safety officer.
Oh, sorry.
What he's telling me is, we don't normally, but if there was a proposed change of where the bus stop was going to be, the schools usually run it by us to get our opinion, but not on a regular basis. Like we don't, what I was talking about, we don't meet at the beginning of the school year and go through all the bus stops. But if there is a change, then they will run it by us.
Yeah, sorry. This is a question for the applicant. Like, how are you going to restrict the residents to the 327 parking spaces? Like, are you going to write it into their lease? Like, I'm thinking, when you have if you have full occupancy, somebody's going to have guests over. And where are those guests going to park? Are they going to go into Teresa's lot? And I think somebody brought it up earlier about the spillover into other folks' neighboring streets, right? I don't think anyone's going to park on Elm Street. If they do, like, I'm sure there's going to be some calls to the police department, and local tow company can make some money. But just practically speaking, how are you going to restrict?
It's a great question. To be perfectly honest, the 1.0 per bedroom translates to sufficient parking. I can't even think of a project that we built in Eastern Mass where we've had a problem. Most of our projects are self-contained like that. Some are abutting on public streets where there could be overflow problem, but we just don't tend to have that problem. The math tends to work out at 1.0 in our experience. Were there to be overflow problems, I believe the natural overflow would be into, for overnight parking, would be into Teresa's parking areas, and that's something that we can certainly speak with Mr. Gallo about. We're challenged by the more parking you build that isn't being used is kind of not great because it's impervious, so it doesn't help. It's not good. Okay. Obviously, if you don't have enough parking, that's really bad because then people won't be renting. The magic number is 1.0 per bed. That's what we've seen on all our developments in Eastern Massachusetts. We're highly incented to be correct about this because if we're wrong in either direction, it's bad. But to the extent that there's a concern, we would certainly be willing to broach the subject.
So, thank you. And I apologize. This is just, I believe, the purpose of my role. Parking and public safety for purposes of traffic all due respect, at least to me, if the board disagrees, are kind of two different subjects. In other words, I'm more concerned with what's going on in terms of what goes in, what comes out, not how it's situated during the day. I mean, I have comments that attend to parking. The board might as well. I appreciate Matt asking that, because ultimately it still goes to the idea of flow, at least for the public safety officials that have joined us and the studies that have been done. Correct me if I'm wrong, nothing was asked to be the peer review for parking. It was just traffic, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Regarding public safety though, and I apologize if I'm tracking off now, but you are here tonight, and just assume. Is there a protocol for responding to calls to the department for concerns? In other words, if you live at 10 Hemlock Road and you see a suspicious activity and you call it, and I call it in, is the usual response to send a unit out just to do a drive-by, or send whoever is out there just to say, can you curve by and take a look? Is that how you generally do business or protocol?
Yes, so unless we don't have a car available, we respond to every call.
Okay, and
We
the
don't,
reason I asked.
we don't triage them
Sure.
through
No, and I
the
wouldn't expect
dispatch.
you to, because who knows, right?
Right.
Your job is to respond, not guess at what's gonna happen. So if you add any number of people to a development in a fixed period place, is it fair to say that you might be just making more responses there that don't involve situations such as, concerned individuals? Like, is that going to impact your activity at, 200 units are added, you're gonna see an increase in activity to Elm Street, at 20 Elm Street?
I would anticipate, yes.
Okay.
I mean, you add anybody to the equation, you're gonna have additional calls for service. Depends on the clientele. For instance, Martin's Landing is an over 55 community, so the fire department might see an increase in their calls because of the nature of the clients that are, the residents that are there. Here, certainly, just as we've seen with Edgewood Apartments, we've seen an increase in calls for service because you're putting, let's say in this area, this complex, 200 units and 300 or 500 people in here, there's gonna be calls for service up here. So it would be, I couldn't say that we wouldn't. We anticipate there'll be more calls for service as soon as you add the complex.
But every call gets responded.
Yeah, unless we don't have a car available.
Sure.
And like you said, but we have mutual aid, so we'll use them if we have to. But somebody, you call, somebody's coming. It might not be us, it might be Middleton, it might be Linfield, but somebody's coming.
Did everything get posted on I didn't get a chance to look, is the report and the appendices online for anyone to download? Okay, so that, the appendices includes all of the ITE values and charts, I believe, that's all included as part of the backup. So if you have access to that, you can go check that on your own, you can look and see if it was here or there, what might it be, you can verify the numbers on your own, if that's of interest to you. I don't know, I think there's a couple other questions.
No, I know there are. Before we get,
I'm gonna take board privilege, sorry. Is there anything, I don't recall seeing it, but nothing with the split turning left and right that would have you conclude requiring right turn only would make this safer? Based on what I saw, there was no indication, but can I hear you say it in your fancy words?
Correct. Well, it's two parts. There wasn't enough volume to dictate having your own lane, and then with an access like that, typically would leave it as one lane less than you use it to. So the volumes that I saw didn't suggest that you needed dedicated, exclusive turn lanes.
Who generates that if it is decided? Is that done by internally, or is that just done by public safety?
Usually done with public safety. It's fair case dependent. If you saw a need that, like, for some reason, all your traffic was going right, then yeah, you would do that. But because of the way they balance the traffic and the way I looked at it, like I said, like, we could argue about a couple of %, but I'm agreeing with the split that they chose, and with the split that they have, there's not enough volume total to warrant 2 lanes. Because you could have 2 lanes, you could have a left and a shared right. You could have like 2 lefts and a right. You could have any combination that would go with that.
Does the limitation of a single road point now change that in any way? Or is that too speculative or something that has to be determined?
That's speculative at this point, I would say.
Please,
Yeah.
name,
Christine McNeil, 4 Lynn Street. Just a question, because of a comment that Mr. Baranski just made. He said that all of the developments that they've done throughout Massachusetts, you know, they felt that 1.0 per bedroom was the right number.
Approximately, I'm not
Right.
going to
Yeah.
zero in perfectly.
I'm not holding you to it. But my question really comes down to, how many of these towns don't have public transportation versus how many of them do? Because that could have a very drastic change to the number of cars needed per bedroom. And as we all know here in North Reading, no
That's
public
fair.
transportation.
That's fair.
So-
I mean, with the exception, I guess, of Worcester, they're all Eastern Mass projects. I'd say that, off the top of my head, the towns that they've developed in all have some public infrastructure, but in many cases, we're not proximate to. We're not walking distance. If people were to use it, they are driving to the station or the parking lot. And obviously, it's
Just
different.
something to consider,
No,
just based on what I heard.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, parking matters. If you don't have parking, it's a big problem.
Yeah.
It would be bad for the neighborhood, although I don't really see people parking on Lynn Street and trying to hop fences, but it's bad, right?
No, and
There's
it
no
really
question it's bad.
was more
It's just-
not so much on the traffic, or the parking side, but it, as Mr. Chair said, it relates to the flow.
Sure.
Right? And so all of the numbers have been based on 1 per bedroom. And if the numbers based on 1 per bedroom are perfectly valid in locations where they have much better or closer access to public transportation, then that could lead to a very different outcome in terms of the number of cars per bedroom that need to be factored in for this development at this location.
So, and I'm not a traffic engineer, so I'll defer obviously to the many people who know much more. What the parking is what the parking is. What the traffic consumption is what the traffic consumption is based on the data that's available. If we have, if we have enough parking or not enough parking, doesn't necessarily translate into how much vehicle ingress and egress occurs.
They're gonna be closely
And I'll defer to
correlated.
professionals. I'll defer. To me, they are distinct issues.
Right, that's all, I just wanted to raise that question because your comment was, all over the state. We're
Yeah.
not, in some ways, equivalent to a lot of locations in the state.
This
Because
is a
of the
unique
infrastructure.
location like all the others.
yes.
Hi, good evening. My name's Kathy Stewart, 13 Riverside Drive. I have 2 questions. The first is relative to public safety. And you had indicated that with that there was an increase in the number of calls when Edgewood became available. Having said that, if Edgewood was getting an increased number of calls, if you look at the location of Edgewood, which is surrounded pretty much on almost 3 sides without residential property, this one is going to be at least on 3 sides with very, very close residential property. I would, not to be disrespectful to anyone moving into the community, but there would perhaps be a greater increase that I need to be wary about, like locking my car every night, worrying about theft, worrying about break-ins than I normally have now. I would ask, one, your opinion on that, and what, besides people being diligent, as we all should be anyway, and are probably not, we should be. That was my one question for you. And then I just had one further question regarding the spaces at Teresa's, if that's okay. Thank you.
So as far as the increase, I don't know, is the short answer. But what I would say is you have to be diligent no matter where you live. And I can just tell you, historically through the town, we have car break-ins. We might have at Edgewood, but we have them in McIntyre. We have them in Hemlock, somebody mentioned. Like, they're everywhere throughout town. As you said, the times have changed. Criminals are on the move. They're in vehicles. They're not walking, so they're everywhere. So I would just say, no matter where, no matter even adding these, you still have to be diligent as far as locking your cars, having lights, having cameras. And I would just say, we call it target hardening. The harder you make it for a criminal to get into your car or to get into your house is the best that you can. And we would recommend that to anybody, no matter where they live.
My question on the parking was just, is Teresa, because I just don't know this, is Teresa's function room, whatever, their restaurant, going to retain the same parking spaces number that they have now?
So we, in the course of the easement, when we were doing the egress on the west of the site near Woodmanzy's house where the fence, where the fence, we were taking a certain amount of parking from Mr. Yellow in order to do the driveway and all that. With this new configuration, we actually will be getting a net of about 10 to 14 parking spaces back. All that being said, I think your question is probably, is there sufficient parking for Teresa's to service the clients and functions? Mr. Yeva is very comfortable that the amount of remaining
I bet
parking.
he is, isn't he? Sorry, I could not help but restrain myself on that one. All right, because I know that, you know, it's a big function facility, it's very popular, there's weddings, there's Christmas parties, there's lots of things going on where there are lots and lots and lots of cars. And I didn't know whether they would be able to really contain what they have, or if not, where would their overflow go? It's one thing for the residents, but it's certainly another if all of a sudden you've got 200 or 300 people at a wedding. That's a lot of people. And
Those
where
people now
would
have
they
to
go?
cross the access
And
road.
how would they do that? That was just my question, and I just didn't know if that was pertinent to this or not, but I thought I would just ask. So thank you for whatever you can provide.
Karen Caleras, 7 Putter Court. I live at the Greens across the street. So just so I understand this, there's not going to be an access road out opposite Mid-Iron Drive anymore? Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So there's only going to be that one access road at Teresa's, it's at where Teresa's is now?
That is correct. There are going to be no new driveways onto Elm Street.
Okay, so there won't be that opposite us. Okay, thank you.
So, being a resident across, I know that there are representatives from the golf course with us tonight, and I wanted to have them have an opportunity to express any thoughts, concerns, questions regarding traffic or otherwise, please, and for the record.
Sure. Attorney Tim Booton represents the Thompson Golf Course. We understand that this is a traffic thing tonight. I was happy to hear that they did that count during August. That is kind of our biggest time for traffic coming out. But basically we're here because we realized that the plan, we have periphery interest, was moving our water line, which is the lifeblood for our golf course. So we spoke with the developer, now we're on a page, for some reason, he had the wrong people to contact. So we felt like we were out on the outside and no one was contacting us because obviously, not for lack of better words, monkeying with our water, that could kill our course. So we're dealt with that, but as far as the traffic study and stuff is going, we're adequate to it. And maybe I'm wrong here, but could somebody have said that, explain what the peer review is, because I think people are under the impression that this gentleman works for the developer, and they're asking him questions like he works for the developer, and I know he doesn't. So again, when you say peer review, and I'm not insulting anybody, but I don't think a lot of the audience understand what a peer review is.
So again, the idea of the peer review is that, Council, and I started to draw the same inference, but in fairness, they're working off of the same statistical analysis, so it was appreciated that the GM answered those questions. The peer review is basically a set of eyes to look at aspects of the project without taking a side, and their role is to be independent while providing a reliable review, literally, of the issues that are raised in particular or in general. So they took and are continuing to take not only on traffic but other aspects of the project that are submitted to them, and from there generate views, appraisals, considerations, concerns about those aspects of the project, be it design, engineering, traffic, parking, in theory, and so in this, when we as council just pointed out, the first person that discussed the traffic was from the developer applicant, and then I apologize, John is from the firm that is conducting that more independent review of the traffic.
Entirely.
Yes. So but and yes, he was very courteous and kind and providing very very useful information. I mean, but again, I think ultimately we all live in a world where we're given statistics, and we want to believe that they apply across the board and they're going to tell us the future. But quite frankly, they just come to an average. I mean, statistics is a study of averages, and situations often fall outside of the expected or the average. Again, with accidents, there's no way to predict. We could do put a dozen traffic lights on this area, and it might still result in a traffic incident. But by the same token, the community would feel better with 12 traffic lights. So there you go. It just depends on what you're looking to achieve, and what can be achieved, respectively. So, Council, is there anything else that?
Nothing, we're fine.
So, while your thought was more towards the engineering of this?
Yeah, there's a water line.
Sure.
On that side of the easement.
And so that
We
is
have an
it?
easement that's going to be moved. So.
They have had conversations and are ongoing, or is it?
Well, we just contacted them. Unfortunately, the person they had to contact us is a deceased member, so they were not able to contact them. So we felt like we wanted to make sure nothing was happening, coming around the side. So we've spoken to them and realized that just a miscommunication. So we're going to work with them on our relocation of our easement.
Not to speak ill of the dead, but you might be well off by not having to deal with it. But let's hope it all resolves just as well for all of us. And that's my cheap shot for the night. Danielle McKnight from town.
Thank you, Danielle McKnight, town planner. My comment is really just about the loss of parking on the Teresa's property. need to do an analysis to be sure, and I'm happy to look on that with the building inspector to be sure that it still meets the zone.
We were aware of that. Well, we were aware and communicated that with Mr. Young.
Okay, so traffic, public safety related to not only traffic, but the role of law enforcement and community policing. I'm asking if there's anybody else, any further comments, I'm gonna just give member first.
So just to piggyback on that comment about, so our zoning, it's 2 parking spaces per, I don't know how it applies to Teresa's, but I guess while our traffic engineers are here, can we get you to opine on a town with no public transportation? Is 2 parking spaces per unit a reasonable requirement?
I think so. We'll take a lot of the other ones. So the parking data that we have, once again, comes from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And similar to how we do the trip generation, which is by a land use code, this is something that we did briefly touch upon in the study. So the 327 plus or minus spaces is, we don't look at it on a per bedroom basis. We look at it on a per unit basis. And the data that's published by the ITE, which once again is based on data sites, in this case, in a suburban area, so not an urban, not a built-up area, in a suburban area. The average demand is 1.23 parking spaces per unit, with the 85th percentile peak parking demand, which is oftentimes what we'll use as kind of the baseline to assess parking adequacy at, is 1.45 parking spaces per unit, and 327 plus minus spaces is 1.63 spaces per unit. So this well exceeds the average and exceeds the 85th percentile peak parking demand for a use such as this.
But if you were to take every community in most statistics that have public transportation and throw them out, is 2 parking spaces per unit still reasonable?
That is something I am unable to tell you. There are hundreds of studies, and I don't know a breakdown at this exact moment of which of those studies, how close they were to public transit.
John, is it capable of generating?
That would require a lot of work, looking at every single individual.
So many different development you want, and for this particular use, you want to go look at all of these and narrow them down just for that specific one. What I wanted to add was, generally, when, as a consultant, when I do these, I'm usually working with towns that have their own requirement. So if you don't have a requirement that's 2, I go by what they did and say, well, the ITE rate is this, and I'm more or less. If you have your own number that the developer has to adhere to, then, okay, that's what we work with. And I have worked with my municipalities. They require X number of spaces. Some are 2, some have 1.75, some have 1, some has to be discussed and go over it. And that's why I assume sometimes you need a waiver or whatever it is. But if you guys don't set that forth in the requirements, then as a reviewer, I can't hold them to any other number than the ITE number when they exceed that. So if you had their own value, say, okay, well, they aren't getting what you dictated. That's really the only basis I have to go off to say yes or no on evaluating that criteria.
So we have it in our zoning code, correct?
We do, so our zoning bylaw requires 2 spaces per.
So when they're going to request a waiver, I guess as part of that waiver request, we would be looking to see why it's required, right? Like, besides a footnote on page 9 of your report that said, well, the Independent Traffic Association of America thinks it should be 1.23, like, why is that applicable to like red? Because we have a code that you have to adhere to when you request a waiver. I guess you need to show whether it's economic hardship, because if you have 327 spots you can fit here, I guess the question is, why can't you build 160 units to adhere to the code?
I'll defer to council releases the developer of dimensional height, parking, and density restrictions, this being one of those. And so, again, this is a good question in concept, but I don't believe it's one that applies to this situation because the waiver via the 40B releases us from complying with that.
Will the waiver go to the state or will it go to us?
So it's the board's decision initially as to whether to grant the waivers. If the board declines to grant the waivers and we appeal it, then the state would make the decision on that. So, to be clear, the requirement's applicable, but Chapter 40B allows us to seek a waiver for it. Right. And it's the board's decision whether or not to grant the waiver, looking at the project holistically. So we can, of course, provide additional information to you if that's helpful in thinking about whether you think the waiver is appropriate or not.
I just, you're just given the number of parking spots, like you provided some, I guess, qualitative anecdotes would probably like me believe that one is enough per bedroom, but.
Yeah, and our metric, incidentally, our metric is per bedroom, whereas the metric used by the IT is per.
And you're pretty close, you're 320 versus 327. Okay, I guess I think we'd be looking for more information as part of that waiver process on how what is the hardship that requires a waiver.
I do want to be clear that the standard is not whether or not it creates a hardship. It's not a variance. So you're not looking at it with this. I know that some board certainly you hear plenty of variance requests. It's not that standard that applies. They're waivers. So we're not. Hardship is not the question. You're really looking at the project holistically relative to the town's bylaws and balancing that with local concerns that those bylaws support. So it's a different standard than what you're perhaps used to seeing.
Yeah, I just want to clarify too, Bob, a little bit. The initial burden really is for the developer to prove it to you why they should get the waiver, why they need it. It isn't a hardship standard, as council stated. Their burden, though, having said that, if you go ahead and you deny the waiver and you're in an appeal situation with the Housing Appeals Committee, the burden's going to be on you. That you have to prove local concerns which outweigh the need for housing. So you just want to be cognizant of that. That's why this process really requires a give and take and listen to what people say. The board has to take that into account, the developer's response to it, the peer reviewer, and you kind of have to do that balancing yourself, and you really have to take a risk management decision on it, because if you think that you can draw the line on the parking waiver, it's going to be a burden that you have to prove that they shifted on you, and that's a heavy burden that you have to prove. The local concern is so compelling that it outweighs the need for housing. So you just want to, the dialogue and the questioning is totally appropriate. You want the sufficient information, but you should just be aware that it's not something that is a slam dunk to defend on appeal if you go ahead and deny the waiver. So, and really, third parties commenting, I'm not here to advise you, I'm here to advise the board, but you do want to, the one thing that I counsel the boards that I represent is you don't want to have the Housing Appeals Committee end up being your permitting authority. So to the extent that this board can come up with a decision that's adequately protective of local concerns, and they can put conditions on a permit, that that is a favorable scenario under 40B, because the denial process is very hard to overcome at HAC, and they don't send it back. They don't say, oh, you committed an error and we're going to send it back to you to reconsider it. They just issue a permit, and they say issue it in 30 days or this is the permit. And those permits do not take into account local concerns that you're hearing from, like police and fire and building inspector and peer reviewers, any type of conditions that the board comes up with. So you just wanna, I'm not telling you how to comment on the project, the comments are great, but you do just wanna be aware of the fact that it's the board's duty here to really try to come up with a decision that doesn't end up having the State Housing Appeals Committee be your permitting authority in North Reading. So.
With regard to parking per unit, is there a plan to, they're all rental units, correct? They're all rental. And within the lease itself, you can incorporate any amount of terms that a tenant wants to agree to, or not?
Within the constraints of Commonwealth's requirements, yes.
Is it, the Commonwealth's requirements, though, are only limited to the affordable units. All the market units, the rental company or the firm
Yeah, I
controls.
guess what I was interjecting is there may be rental standards that are required by the Commonwealth that we have to comply with.
Sure, but there, the question, I'll get to my question. Has there been any consideration of requiring tenants to rent parking spaces as part of their lease agreement? So in other words, you have an estimate of possibly no more than one space needed. So you grant each of the units one space, and that leaves another
127.
127, thank you, which are basically available to be rented by whomever. They could rent one, they could rent two, or you might condition that. You can't rent, you can rent two, but you can, you get one, but you rent two. Ultimately, you're paying for it through your lease anyway. So is that in any way been discussed? And the reason I ask that is because it will control the parking.
Yeah, we have implemented those measures on more urban projects. We typically have not on more suburban projects.
But that's a condition. That's a condition that your firm has implemented before. Agreeable, you would see, because you just said that you
Yes.
use them in urban.
Yes.
Okay. To the same question, let's say that you choose not to, and there's 100 and, what is it again, 137? 27.
Give or take.
What? Are those all, is it basically going to be first come, first served for all parking unless it's assigned?
Typically, that's how it works out.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Are parking stickers going to be used?
No, we have not done that
Okay.
on any of our Eastern Mass projects.
Garage spaces will be assigned.
I'm sorry, that's a good catch, yes. Garage spaces there's a premium associated with those, and they are assigned, that's correct.
Isn't it generally the standard is pretty much one parking space assigned per lease holder?
To the extent that there is an assignation, yeah, it's usually one per space, yeah. It could be that the 3 bedrooms get 2, but again, it depends on the condition.
You've been helpfully providing follow-up FAQs, very much appreciated. Can we add to the list somewhere? Of the developments you've done in Eastern Mass, how many are urban versus suburban?
Sure.
In the original application that was submitted prior to Trammell and Crowe coming, they had originally had put that the people who are renting the affordable units would be parking outside, and only the people that pay market value would be parking in the garages, and that had changed. And so I'm wondering if there's going to be restrictions based off of if they're affordable. If they're paying for an affordable unit, will they be allowed to have a garage space, or are we?
The garage spaces, there's a premium associated with that. So if they want to pay the premium, they can absolutely have a garage space.
I just think
I don't believe that in the Commonwealth, when it's all available parking, we cannot restrict affordable unit parking from anybody else's, again, because it's first come, first served. And frankly, I don't think that's the right thing to do anyhow.
That's
So
what, it
that
was
wouldn't occur.
disappointing in the
Yeah,
initial
that
application,
would not
especially if
occur.
people are like elderly or like
Yeah.
need affordable housing and they're having to park.
No, and I think it's very much it's not.
That, it was,
I don't know.
It certainly sounds like it should be.
Yeah.
Chief?
No, I was scratching my arm.
Before you pass it, is there any more questions regarding public safety? Yes.
Melissa Austin, 19 Riverside Drive again. The parking, you said it's a slow driveway coming in and out, but it looks like Teresa's parking lot is now split with your access road. What is the crosswalk? Will there be more than one crosswalk? Because it kind of looks like you only have one with the two little dots there, but it's hard to see. Because people coming back and forth there, if there are large functions, what is the safety for those?
And to tie on to that, do you ever employ or put in your own internal flashing lights, crosswalk monitor? I mean, you know, yes, it's not part of, you know, the town or the state or otherwise, but do any of your developments internally use?
I cannot think of a condition where that's occurred off the top of my head.
So what's going to happen to address her?
Yeah, I'm looking at the geometry, and I probably defer to our civil or traffic engineers. I see, I think, at least one point where there's a crosswalk. We received some feedback in a meeting about whether that would be a tabled crosswalk. So there's a table, so that is a traffic calming measure. The thing about tables is they create problems with plows. So, you know, they're great from one perspective, they're not great from another perspective. Again, speaking with Mr. Yeba, we want to make sure that his guests feel very comfortable that they're not going to be at risk in crossing. I'd say generally his feeling is that the parking that's what I'd say is planned south, proximate to the restaurant, will fulfill a lot of his restaurant demand, and then it's when he has functions that people will probably go to the lots up towards Elm Street. But we're certainly amenable to looking at traffic calming conditions, again, with the caveat that we don't want them to interfere with plowing and other uses.
In regards to safety, I mean, common into my buildings, we have called a courtesy officer. Could work for a local police department, a neighboring police department. They get sometimes a discount on rent to just be a presence there. Is that something that you have that?
We've done that on properties. We generally made that available. Every property is a little bit different. I know in Rentham, we did have an opportunity where a local police officer received a discount in exchange for kind of walking the property.
Generally as it's needed.
It's kind of as needed. It's also based on whether the officer wanted that on the property. So I could say that would be certainly something we would consider. I wouldn't or couldn't really commit to that because there's so many variables that I have no control over.
Thank you.
Chief?
Yes.
Animal control, is that part of your offices or is that town? I apologize.
It's town, but he falls under the police department.
So this is a pet-friendly development. Is that of any concern given, there's not going to be, there's no limit, I apologize to the applicant, there's no limitation on any?
Typically, our leases have size and breed limitations.
So if there's any problems, the call goes to your offices, not the town, or is it?
No, so he works out of the police station. He has his own direct line. However, he's only part-time employee.
Okay.
So if he's not working, any animal complaint calls and nuisance calls come to us. If he's not working, then we'll respond. So we'll handle the calls if he's not there. But any of the follow-up, like if there's a dog bite or something like that, he follows up when he's back to work.
Any, is there going to be any on-site security office?
Security office, no. Typically, our leasing office, at least one of the employees will tend to live on the property, usually, site super. And they're available to respond to concerns as they occur when they're off hours. Otherwise, they're addressed by the leasing management group during regular hours.
Any remaining public safety concerns or comments that might be best answered or spoken of to about by the department? Just, I don't want to keep you.
No,
I understand.
Yeah, we'll stay
Okay,
around if somebody has questions
wanted
afterwards.
to,
Like you said, our main thing is really fact finding and trying to, it's really helpful for us. I know we had that one meeting, but just to see the layout, the design, that we're really here just to hear what the studies are, because we're police officers, we're not traffic experts, we're not engineers. Like, we have experience, unfortunately a lot of experience with the two of us, but so really we're just here to hear and learn and offer any input that we can. So there's no rush on us leaving. We'll hang around afterwards if anybody has any questions that they want to ask us offline. So we're here.
Sir.
So it has nothing to do with safety or traffic, but will there be another meeting on stormwater now that they got the correct calculations? I just want to know if it's going to be a 30-foot wall instead of a 25-foot wall.
You mentioned stormwater.
Yes, so we received revised plans right before Thanksgiving, which included some revisions to the stormwater system. We are in the process of reviewing those revisions and generating additional comments. I would say at this point, it's a lot of housekeeping, okay? We're not seeing anything that concerns us greatly, and a big difference from the prior review that we provided.
So will that be brought up in the town meeting, like the new stuff? And also too, last time we were here, sorry to take up your time. You guys were going to show what it looked like from Lynn Street, especially from her place, what a 25-foot wall right up against her property line is going to look like?
I'm the peer reviewer. These guys are going to show you
yes.
that perspective.
Well,
do we have to bring back the golf guys?
Bring one. No, you guys said that you were going to see what it looks like.
Yeah, that's why we're trying to schedule some meetings.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm done.
And that will be brought to town so everyone can see it?
Start with the residents, including you, and I guess it could become available to the broader town. I don't know how pertinent it is, but
I think
if the ZBA, if the chair would want it.
I think a 25-foot wall.
Well, it was never 25, it was 21.
Sorry,
That's
I'm
okay.
off by
That's
3
all
inches.
right.
3 feet.
It's
But anyway,
20%, don't worry.
A 21-foot wall right up against someone's house.
Yeah,
I
it
think
isn't right up against, it's 62 foot from the lot line. But listen, it's a retaining wall, there's no question about it.
Yeah.
It is not right up on the lot line, but,
I think it should be brought to everyone's attention.
Okay.
That's my opinion. The town might feel different.
Thank you, noted. So, we've used this meeting to facilitate conversation about public safety, most specifically traffic. Thank you to the applicant's person as well as most especially to the peer review. And there's been a touch on the issue of parking spaces. And is there anything further from the board on that specifically? If not, is the applicant waiting on the owner of Teresa's / Resort North to clarify the parking number that you're going to either own and/or access, or is that that number hard and fast.
No, I think the numbers are settled at this point. Are you asking about the parking numbers for
With the
our
chips.
development or for the restaurant?
For your development. I don't count any of things that there's no representation here for the restaurant or Resorts North. I want that to be clear. There's not a party here representing them unless you are.
No, I
Okay,
mean,
fair enough. I just wanted to.
they're the underlying landowner, so. I
True
mean,
that, but
certainly
they're
we're
not,
working with them.
there's been no conversation about the effect of this plan on either Teresa's or Resorts North.
We absolutely have had conversations with them. I mean, this is.
Within any of these public hearings. We have no input from them directly.
No, but.
So the question on parking in particular is just what you believe has been determined, right? With regard to, previously there was gonna be a road, and there was gonna be some use of that parking adjacent to that road. That road's gone, so I think you said earlier,
They're getting spaces back.
they're getting spaces back, so that was part of, that's, I want to be.
I think the question that was brought was the taking the spaces that they're losing, does that impact their zoning? We don't have that answer yet, correct?
No, we haven't presented an analysis of Teresa's parking to the board. That's beyond the scope of the comprehensive permit hearing. But certainly that's something that would need to be confirmed to the town, that it's not creating a new nonconformity, which we don't believe that it is. But it's not something that needs to be approved as part of the comprehensive permit hearing. That's helpful.
Use easement of the road, I mean, the best way I can refer to that access is basically Teresa's road. I mean, I think of it that way, just for general understanding. The easement that is going to be needed, that will follow the property, not the.
Correct.
Just for the sake of the.
It will be a perpetual easement that will run with the land, that will be recorded at the time of closing on the property.
And that covers the emergency access as well?
Yes.
Do you know the waivers that you're gonna ask of the board again?
Yes, we'll be submitting an updated waiver list, I believe tomorrow, hopefully, if our civil confirms that it's done.
I have questions about that subdivision process, but I can talk to council offline. Bring it back to you, unless you have questions on that now.
The plans that we've received, that line of demarcation between, for lack of a better word, a better way of thinking of it, Teresa / Resorts North, that is the expected subdivision request?
So within the plan set, there'll be an A&R plan that shows the split, the two different lots. That's different than what you're seeing up here, because this plan shows the access, it's the site plan, it's designed to show the easement and whatnot. That would be shown on the A&R plan, so that we will be, if we haven't already submitted one, we will be.
Will you be submitting that revised plan before the January meeting?
Yes, yeah, we would have that in over January.
In February, do we close the meeting? Or what's the procedure?
So, unless there's anything further questions, again, from the community or from the peer review group or respectfully public safety and or town that will be represented by this. Anything further from the board? Council?
No, I think to Kathy's comment, I think you do want to start to think about the universe of outstanding issues, shorten those up, anticipate what's coming in, what you're waiting on, and sort of think out how you're going to use the rest of the hearing time. You do have, it was confirmed to the 23rd, was it February? is it February?
I don't know.
The
Is it
decision
close?
deadline is the 23rd.
Close of the public hearing, February.
Yes.
Yeah, so the close of the public hearing is February 23rd. Then you'll have 40 days to issue a decision. You know, this process benefits from talking about a decision while the public hearing is open. You may not have time for that. And that would be a potential decision, either a denial decision or an approval with conditions. And again, it behooves everyone for the public hearing to be open when you are contemplating a decision, because then you can get input from third parties, from the applicant, whoever you want to. But if the hearing is closed, you're gonna have to deliberate. It'll be a public deliberation, but you cannot take any comment on it. It'll be just you talking about a draft decision in that 40-day period. So,
I think
does that
for
help
us-
where we're at?
I was gonna say it would be helpful to hear your direction as to what you'd like to hear at the next meeting. I believe at the last meeting you referenced wanting to hear from our architect again, and made reference to conservation. We can certainly have our wetlands consultant. If there are other topics you want us to address at that meeting, that we want the direction from you as to who we should have there and what we would like to hear further on.
Well, the disadvantage of this meeting was that it was so short from the last. I mean, the January meeting is certainly a much greater time. So, thank you.
Can we find out too about where is the Conservation Commission at? Are they, have,
I think they've got an issue.
So.
is the hearing closed for them?
The hearing is not closed yet. We just received the second peer review letter responses today, I believe you indicated. We haven't actually received it yet. Sorry, you indicated
sent it
decision
to the
today.
agent.
Okay.
Oh.
We haven't received it yet. They are set to have a continued hearing session next week. I don't know whether we would maybe be continuing that if we haven't actually received the peer review responses, but I don't believe there are significant issues left before the Concom, so I would expect that by the January meeting, we may well have a decision.
So the only reason I raise it, if there's a local bylaw that's more restrictive than the state act, you want to make sure that the commission comments to you. They may have no questions or concerns under the local bylaw, but if they don't raise it with you and you don't raise the issue, it's forever waived. So they're going to issue a permit under the State Wetlands Protection Act only. If you have a more restrictive bylaw, you stand in their shoes on that. So that's the only reason I ask where they are at. So I don't know, do you have an agent, or it would definitely benefit your process if you formally get in touch with them and get any commentary that they want to submit.
So are you saying that the order of conditions that if they issue one to them, would only be under the state?
Yes.
Would be under the local
Correct.
bylaw?
Right. I'm assuming you only file state.
We filed under
Yeah.
the state, however, we did actually address the local bylaw as part of that filing, and the Concom has considered it. So I won't presume as to whether they'll make findings under it, but I believe they can certainly provide you with their feedback on it.
So on that, that's exactly right. And typically that's what occurs. They will only file under the State Wetlands Protection Act. That's all they're required to do. But the commission needs to understand, and you need to understand, the commission needs to comment to you for any types of findings or conditions that you would want in your permit. Because if they don't, it's waived. Even if they had findings under the local bylaw, they won't be able to enforce any local bylaw provisions. And they won't be able to enforce anything beyond the State Wetlands Protection Act. So it's just something, you just want to make sure you've crossed all the Ts on that. The commission is aware of that. If they found issues of relevance under the bylaw, they want to bring that to you as part of your process. And even if they have it in their order of conditions, you want that in your order too. I've typically had a section for local, conservation commission issues that will be in your permit. So you just want to make sure that that comes in before the hearing is closed.
before our hearing is
Yes.
closed, before their hearing?
Your
is closed?
hearing.
Okay, so they can come anytime
They
between
can
now
come
and
at any time
February
between now and
23rd.
February 23rd, yeah. But you want to get them thinking of that, so.
Did they have all the information? To your understanding, does conservation, have they received everything through the peer review that is?
Today,
as of
they
today?
received it today, yes.
And then they're going to meet the Concom.
They're gonna meet on the 16th, is what I understand. Is that next week?
16th of January.
The next meeting is Tuesday, but we have not received the peer review comment letter back, so we're unsure whether we will attend the hearing or ask for a continuance, because we need to see if they have substantive comments, then we need time to address those before we go back before our conservation commission.
I brought a copy.
So it asked the question, this is all attendant to the revision to the stormwater plan? Information that was recently provided by the developers? Or,
And for the Conservation Commission peer review, yeah, that was the focus of that peer review. And resource areas, there was some, I think, some comments that were made previously regarding some of the erosion controls and where they were, et cetera.
the reason I ask is I want to make sure they have enough time, but at the same time, making sure we have enough time. And in trying to ensure enough time respectively, you know, we have the opportunity with agreement by the applicant to expand the window. in
Yeah,
which
if
we
the
make-
applicant assented to extend the deadline to close the public hearing, you're free to do that.
But, and I wouldn't ask that upon anybody unless
We needed it.
need or apologetically say cause. And if this information and or findings or changes or revisions are coming, excuse me, sorry, are coming from the applicant. Sorry. You know, is that a reasonable?
Yeah, I mean,
basis
you're gonna have to discuss that with them, see where they're at on that. I mean, another reason to extend the public hearing is also to talk about a decision.
No, I understand that, but at the same time, I don't want to.
Well, let's put it this
I
way,
wanna-
they haven't indicated a willingness yet to extend your deadline. If there's outstanding information, I'm sure that they'll be reasonable about it, but
But
yes,
I
they
can't
can
speak
agree
for,
to
I
it.
can't speak, we can't speak for conservation. So they may not be seeing it the same way, with the same eye to a calendar as we are.
Oh, well,
I mean, I could be wrong, and I respect that.
I doubt very much it should be complicated for them to say if they have comments relevant to the bylaw to you. Like, they
But
should
in
be
terms
able-
of what they're processing upon receipt, right? They're meeting for that purpose on the 16th.
Well, I think the hearing was extended to the
Okay.
16th.
It's gonna be extended potentially again. We know when they're meeting when their next meeting is after the 16th?
I'm not,
Okay.
Danielle?
So it would be,
I don't know when they generally
Would be January.
It's usually the same.
gotcha.
Right, I'm not trying to. I'm trying to approach this pragmatically.
You have sent your peer review to the applicant, and now the applicant is going to respond to your, and that's what you might not have back by the 16th? Is that correct?
So the document we just received, we've not received the email yet. I don't know.
We've not officially received
Yeah,
it
we
from
haven't
Lydia,
received.
the Concom agent.
I think it goes to the Concom agent, then to us. So our caveat is that we need to make sure we have sufficient time to respond to these comments in a meaningful manner in order to make the meeting on the 16th fruitful. Looking at the comments, it may be possible that we can maintain a meeting on the 16th, subject to the availability of our wetland scientists responding. These don't look onerous. They look as if they're probably detailed, ministerial details. But I don't think that
The
will
commission's next meeting after the December meeting is January 13th. So we will certainly have appeared either Tuesday or at that next meeting before this board meets on the 22nd.
And an entirely separate issue, the agent should just be contacted that we need your input to our process. Because they're gonna do their own thing, they're gonna issue their permit, but they have to just tell you if they have any comments for local bylaw to you. That the questions or concerns that they have, conditions that they suggest, findings that are relevant to local bylaw, which would have to be in your permit. So they just need to be aware of that. There may not be any there, or there may be a limited number, but they just need to be aware.
So on the 22nd, we'll talk about architecture, and we'll also talk about conservation. That, depends on what their letter is.
I think it will depend on what the peer review letter looks like, right? If we've closed out and addressed the issues and it's primarily ministerial comments, it may not make sense to schedule an entire meeting for that.
Will you be here regardless?
Sure.
Are we paying anybody out?
Well, they're paying.
Did you discuss this with John? So 22nd, we'll give you a better, well, at least in it, well, with two items again. Architecture and conservation for sure. And very likely, anything that has been raised is going to be our last best chance at, effectively, last chance comments.
Yeah. Right, you could kind of have a clearinghouse in that January meeting to say, what are our outstanding issues? Either that can be tied up by the end of February or not. And it sounds like you should be able to.
Because in all fairness, I want the applicant to have all their people available if that is possibly going to different aspects we can raise and facilitate resolution, understanding of those concerns. Obviously, there are things that may never come to an agreement between the community and the applicant, but at the same time, the board is best served, as is the process, by having a clear understanding to whatever way it moves. You know, to be closer to agreement as opposed to we just kind of will never get to the point.
Are you suggesting we want the civil here as well, to answer any other?
I'm open to.
If this is a catch-all?
I'm open to anybody's thoughts, as well as those.
We can certainly make any of our professionals available to the extent that your inquiries or responses to any outstanding queries. I mean, you tell us and we'll have them.
I would assume the board will be setting some meeting dates in February as well. So it's not like your last chance to get answers.
No, but it's on this established timeline that we've had. I always think that we would probably, for lack of a better phrase, double up possibly before our final deadline date. And the dates that fall on Monday or Tuesday.
26th is a Thursday.
That's our thing. It's close. Close the public hearing.
I said 26.
That's what I thought.
You have.
I had the 23rd.
You have the 23rd, that's a Monday.
I mean, yeah, if you needed the 3 days to reach an additional meeting date in for, obviously we're not gonna swap them over things like that, but,
Yeah, actually, can we talk about February while we're talking about it?
Go ahead.
So Monday, the 23rd, the the week before is school break week. Week before, week of the 9th. I'm out of town the week before, the first week of February. So that leaves the week of the 9th for our last February meeting.
Okay, so school vacation,
It's the week of the 16th.
the week of the 16th.
So that was out,
And that rolls right up onto the 12th.
yeah,
Okay.
and the first week of the month.
You're unavailable.
Yeah, so that leaves the week of the 9th.
Week of the 9th. So we stay on a Thursday schedule, we'd be talking about meeting on February 12th. And then which would be, unless there's a discussion and agreement on extending past the 23rd. That would be. So why don't we set February right now, February 12th for sure.
I'm not sure about getting this room in
Right.
February. Can we leave the location to be determined?
Well, you're
For
not
February,
you're not
yeah,
continuing to the 12th now, you're continuing just to January 22nd.
Right, we're talking, we're just discussing
Place of-
February,
Yeah.
practically. So, and unless John has a comment on traffic, I don't think we need to stand there. Of course, you could be handling traffic of school vacation week, so
I might go on vacation myself.
right, but just, Michelle's giving everybody a heads up that.
Yes.
It's a short month.
It's a short month.
Big context
and, but for practical purposes, this board should be meeting February 12th, whether it's on regular,
So
it is.
hold the 12th.
Hold the 12th. We'll be targeting the 12th to meet in February. And then, I think at our next meeting, we'll practically discuss something past Monday the 23rd.
As I indicated, and recognizing that it falls on a Monday, even obviously, if you wanted to extend to the end of that week, so you could fit in a Thursday meeting on the 26th,
Sure.
I think that's.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very generous.
And of course, you're gonna dedicate an entire area so we can have a permanent meeting, public meeting area right off the golf course, which would make
Go find my
council
golf
very
cart.
happy. All right, last call for comments and or thoughts. Yes, Danielle.
Just in terms of, use our peer reviewers, do we want to have a discussion as we get closer to the next meeting? I mean, if there could be a scenario where all of the peer review comments have been adequately addressed, we have our final letter saying that all issues have been addressed. So just wanted to see, I mean, I wasn't sure if you knew already that you would want, our peer reviewers to be there, or if you wanted to wait to see if all of the issues could be addressed. I just wasn't sure if you wanted to plan on that now, or.
Yes, the 22nd, we should have as full an array as available, so that, with the assumption that the more particular specific reasons for the 22nd are addressed in advance of the 22nd, it will afford us the opportunity to, again, take input. And it would be the job of the board and myself probably more particular that anything that has been raised and addressed, is now just final comments on it and not to have need for review or further review unless, something develops and is found otherwise. Okay. Any last thoughts from the applicant before we close? Yes. So at this time, I'd like to formally continue the public hearing with regard to development of 20 Elm Street, North Reading, Massachusetts. Continuing the hearing to Thursday, January 22nd, 2026, 6 p.m. at the Distance Learning Lab in North Reading, at the North Reading High School. Would anybody Somebody like to second that?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of continuing the public hearing?
Aye.
Bob Green, aye. Thank you, board. Thank you, applicants, council, and members of the police department. Thank you, and thank you for being here. Have a safe evening.